Do not let your hearts be troubled. Easy for Jesus to say. He's Jesus, right? But it is worth remembering that just in the last few weeks, the Gospel of John has described to us Jesus having a troubled heart himself. When he comes to Lazarus' home after he died, Lazarus' sister, Mary, comes to Jesus complaining that he's late. And to see her weeping, John tells us Jesus was deeply troubled. His heart was troubled. When he arrives at Lazarus' tomb, again, John describes Jesus as being deeply troubled. Fast forward just a little bit, and either on Palm Sunday evening or very early in Holy Week, when one of the apostles brings to Jesus a group of Greeks who are interested in Jesus and his ministry, something about seeing the nations starting to be gathered around him makes Jesus realize the time for his sacrifice is near. And when he sees those Greeks, he is described by the Gospel of John as having a troubled heart. And then on Holy Thursday, Commandment Thursday, Maundy Thursday, after Jesus washes the disciples' feet, he gets back up from his service, puts on his outer robe again, and shares with the disciples, "My heart is deeply troubled." His heart is deeply troubled, he says, because he knows that one of his best pals in the world is about to betray him. Do not let your hearts be troubled, Jesus says. He says that even though he himself had a troubled heart in his life and ministry. And I suppose there is some comfort to those of us who are followers of Jesus to know that he who is fully human and fully divine has experienced brokenheartedness. And we can trust that a Messiah who represents a God who has created us, knows what we're going through, and stands in solidarity with us in our suffering. That is comforting. But still, the preacher in me, over the course of this last week, asked the Lord a couple times, "Really, Jesus, let not your hearts be troubled when you yourself had a troubled heart all through this past season? Isn't that a little bit like preaching, 'Do what I say and not what I do,' which is a perfectly valid parenting approach, but still makes me wonder?" The reason Jesus is able to give us this command that Holy Thursday and this Easter 5 morning is because Easter changes everything. Easter changes everything for Jesus. Easter changes everything for you and the human family and for all of creation. But in this morning's passage, Jesus talks about two particular ways that Easter makes a huge difference. First, Jesus says, "In my Father's house," or "in my Father's household," or "in my Father's mansion, there is plenty of room for everyone." I think I have been at a point in my ministry in this postmodern age and context where I've kind of assumed to myself that everybody nowadays thinks that they're going to heaven. So heaven doesn't sound like such a big deal anymore. But more and more as we make our way into this post-Christian era, I have experienced people mourning as if there is no heaven, even though they like to imagine grandma or grandpa doing their favorite activity with all of their ancestors and Jesus somewhere in the sweet by and by. They don't mourn like they believe in heaven. They mourn as if this is some sort of permanent separation. So there is still ministry to be done, my friends, brothers and sisters in Christ, fellow evangelists of the gospel. This time and people still need to hear about the mansion with plenty of room for everyone, because the way they're mourning is warping their souls. When I think about that promise, I think it gives us perspective on the problems of life. You may have a broken heart. You may have that tape of fear, shame, guilt, and regret playing over and over again. Maybe you have failed. Maybe you failed in your relationship. Maybe you failed in your career. Maybe you failed your family. Maybe you failed your legacy. I don't know what the source of your brokenheartedness may be, but whatever it may be, this morning is a reminder from the Lord to keep your eyes on the prize. Now, Lutherans, it's not a prize you earn, but it is the goal. It is the end. Keep your eyes on the mansion where there is plenty of room for everyone. Through the ages, as the church has thought about God's promises to us, we have remembered this promise as a way to swamp all of the ugliness of life as it is now. We call that theology, heaven swamps all. And it's not meant to minimize your pain. It doesn't mean you can escape the consequences of your action or inaction, but it does mean that you can have perspective here and now about the travesties and travails of this life and realize that they are so small in comparison to the glories that wait for you just on the other side of the last time you close your eyes. That's the first big change that Easter makes that Jesus talks about this morning. The second one comes right at the end, the punchline, if you will, for this morning's reading. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Back in the days of Christendom, back in the days when we were all Christian and everybody we knew was Christian, that promise from Jesus sounded like unconditional, radical grace. But now, as Jesus has gathered around us neighbors of many faiths and none, there are some times where those powerful words of grace can sound, sometimes, like maybe they are challenging to people who are not Christian. And I would just offer you this perspective on those sacred words. I don't think that in a 10-minute sermon I can resolve that tension, or I certainly cannot dismiss that tension. I think the church just has to somehow learn to live in that tension. But I will tell you what I personally hear as a baptized Christian when I hear Jesus say, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I have lots of neighbors, lots of friends who are Christian, who are not Christian, and members of other faith communities, or who are not Christian and are agnostic or atheist, or who are not Christian, not of another religion, not atheist or agnostic, but they kind of like a spiritual smorgasbord of life nowadays. And lots of them talk about God. And they talk about God as they experience God in the grandeur of nature. They talk about God in a sense of being guided or playing a part in some great divine will or plan. Lots of people nowadays talk about God. But it is so easy when you don't speak a single spiritual language fluently. It is so easy when you've had no formation in the faith. It is so easy when all you have to trust when it comes to God is that little pope that lurks within each one of our souls. It is so easy to make God into this distant, impersonal creator that is either logic or judgment or some other caricature of God. For those folks who experience God in the abstract, and for those of us who are called to be followers of Jesus' way, it's important to remember what Jesus doesn't say this morning as much as what he does say. Jesus does not say, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to God except through me. There are plenty of people who are reaching out to God. There are plenty of ways that God is reaching out to them. What Jesus says is no one comes to the Father except through me. This experience of a God who's distant clockmaker or cruel judge or, sort of a God that rules by divine fiat and is just waiting to throw thunderbolts down at those who stray from a very narrow path, to all of that terrible nonsense, that human projection about who God actually is. Jesus says that's not the way to experience the reality of the divine. The way is to realize that God, whatever you may think God is like, God is our Abba. If you look at the original languages, God is our dad. It's not father. Jesus calls God dad, parent, a source of unconditional and undeserved love. And if you think about the Christianity that is popular nowadays, the Christianity that loves Zeus theology and tries to scare the hell out of people in order to get them to convert, which is just a spiritual version of conversion by the sword and does nothing to honor the legacy of Jesus. Instead, Jesus says no one can get to the experience of God as Father except through me, except through this family of faith. If you wonder to yourself, what does Peace Lutheran Church have to offer? We have at the very least and at our very best this message that the God we cannot see is a God who loves us like our Abba. So, do not let your hearts be troubled. Keep your eye on the prize and let it give perspective to all of your suffering. And remember that as you negotiate the travesties and travails of this life, that God is not up there just waiting to smite you. God is as close as your next breath, breathing love and spirit into every cell of your body so that you can join Jesus and all the faithful before and to come in praying, Our Father who art in heaven. Amen.